Hello dear listener, thank you for clicking on this video. The testimony I will share with you in few minutes time is something everyone needs to know about the kingdom of darkness and what they are planning. You are here not by chance, so I encourage you to watch this video to the very end so that you won't miss any part of this testimony. Before I go into it, we would love to know where you are watching from in the comments section. That way we can connect with each other as one family. So do well to tell us where you are listening from in the comments section. Also give this video a thumbs up so that more people will get to see this video and also be blessed by it. If you have done that, may God bless you. Now let's get into it. I don't know how to start this. I've been trying to write this down for almost 2 years now, and every single time I sit at the table and open my notebook, something in me just goes quiet. Not the good kind of quiet. The kind where your hand won't move because some part of you is still afraid that if you say it out loud, if you actually put it into words, people gonna look at you different. People gonna think you lost your mind, or you making it up for attention, or whatever else they want to say. But I'm writing it anyway, because what I saw, I was not supposed to come back from. And I think the reason I did come back, the reason I'm sitting here right now with my hands shaking just a little bit trying to get through this, is because somebody somewhere was supposed to hear it. My name is Mark, and I died. Not almost died, not close call, not I saw light and felt peaceful, and then the doctors brought me back. I actually left. I left my body, I left everything I knew, and I went somewhere that no human language was built to describe properly. I've tried. Lord knows I have tried. And the best I can do is this: imperfect words. My words, rough as they are. It started on what felt like a regular night. I had not been feeling well for a few weeks, but the way men do, especially the kind of man I was back then, I just kept pushing through. Kept telling myself I was fine. Drank more water, took some over-the-counter stuff, figured it was stress or maybe I wasn't sleeping enough. I had a lot going on at the time and my body was probably just running on empty. That night I went to bed and something was off. I could feel it even before I closed my eyes. There was a heaviness in my chest that wasn't quite pain but wasn't comfortable either. I told myself I'd feel better in the morning. I always said that. I always believed it. I didn't feel better in the morning. What happened in between? That in-between space, that is what I'm here to tell you about. I remember the feeling of falling. Not falling like you trip and go down, falling like the ground underneath existence itself just opened up and you went through it. Everything went dark real fast and then it wasn't dark anymore. It was something else, something I don't have a word for. It was like darkness that had texture, like the dark was made of something, like it had weight and intention, like it was watching you back. I wasn't in my room no more. I wasn't in my body no more. I knew that immediately. You just know. You can't explain it, but you know the way you know when you walk into a room that something happened there before you arrived. The air tells you, something tells you. I was somewhere else, and the somewhere else was real. More real somehow than anything I had ever felt while I was alive and inside my physical form. I wasn't walking exactly. I was just moving, being moved maybe. Like something was pulling me forward through this space that had no walls but still felt enclosed. No ceiling but still felt low. I was aware of myself, of my thoughts, of the fact that I was me, Mark. But my body was not with me. And that should have been terrifying. And it was. But it was also just the truth of where I was. And something about extreme fear has this way of flattening out into a kind of terrible calm when there's nothing you can do about it anyway. Then I started to hear things. Not voices exactly, not at first. More like sound beneath sound. Like if you've ever heard 2 radio stations bleeding into each other and you can't quite make out either one, but you know something is being communicated. It was like that, layered, and underneath all of it, this low vibration, almost like a tone, almost like something humming, but not in any way that felt peaceful. It felt purposeful, mechanical almost, like machinery running. And then I saw it. I don't know what else to call it except a room. It wasn't a room in any sense you'd recognize. There were no walls made of anything I can name. The space was vast, but it felt contained. It felt organized. And that was the thing that hit me first and hit me hardest, the organization of it. Because when most people think about evil, when most people think about darkness and the devil and all that, they think chaos. They think screaming and fire and disorder. And there was none of that where I was. What I saw was structured. What I saw was deliberate. What I saw was a war room. I understood that even as I was standing there, even as I was trying to process what my eyes were taking in, something in my spirit just translated it for me and said, "This is where they plan. This is where the attacks come from. This is the place behind the place." There were figures. I won't call them creatures because that word makes people think of something animal, and what I saw was not animal. These were beings with intelligence, beings with rank, beings who knew exactly what they were doing and had been doing it for a very long time. They moved with the kind of confidence that comes from thousands of years of practice. There was a hierarchy to them. You could feel it without anyone explaining it. Some of them commanded space differently than others. Some of them barely moved and somehow had more presence than the ones that did. Like the stillest ones were the most dangerous, and they were working. That's the word that kept going through my spirit as I watched. Working. They were at work. This was not idle. This was not random. There were what felt like maps, but not maps of places exactly. Maps of people. Maps of systems. Maps of institutions and governments and families and individual lives. And the beings were studying them, pointing at them, making what felt like decisions about them. I saw something that looked like assignments being given out. One being would gesture toward something, toward what felt like a person or a community or maybe a whole region, and another being would receive that gesture and something would pass between them, like a transfer of authority, like a contract being handed over, and then that being would move with purpose, like it knew exactly where it was going and exactly what it was going to do when it got there. I understood in that moment, and I mean, I understood it not just in my head, but in my bones. My spirit, every part of whatever I was in that place. I understood what the Apostle Paul meant when he wrote that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, because what I was watching was the wrestling. This was the backstage of every conflict I had ever seen play out in the world. Every war, every broken marriage, every person who couldn't get free from something no matter how hard they tried. Every community that kept eating itself alive. Every generation that passed the same wound down to the next one. This was the planning room for all of that, and the planning was specific. That's what I need you to hear. It wasn't general. It wasn't vague. It was targeted. These beings weren't just throwing chaos into the world and hoping something stuck. They were studying. They were identifying. They were looking for what I can only describe as entry points, places where a person was already wounded, places where a family already had a fracture, places where a church or a community already had a divide that hadn't healed, and they were pressing into those exact places with surgical precision. I watched one of them, one of the higher ones, the kind that barely moved but filled the space around it. I watched it focus on something, and it was like everything else in the room paused for just a second. Like even the other beings recognized that this one was doing something significant. And what it was focusing on was not a country or a city or even a community. It was a single person, one life. And it was studying that life the way a general studies a battlefield before the final push, looking at every angle, identifying every weakness, planning not just one attack, but a sequence of them, each one designed to make the person more vulnerable to the next. That broke something in me, because I had spent most of my life thinking that my struggles were just my struggles. Thinking that the things I couldn't overcome were just my failures, my weakness, my inability to get it together, and standing there, watching. I realized that some of what I'd been through in my life was not just random. Some of it was aimed. Some of it was a campaign. Some of it was warfare dressed up as circumstance. And I had been fighting it with no armor, with no knowledge that I was even in a fight. The grief of that almost knocked me down even in a place where I had no knees to buckle. Then something changed. I don't know what triggered it. I don't know if I made a sound or if something in me reached out in desperation, but something shifted in the atmosphere of that place, and some of the beings became aware of me. Not all of them, but some of them. And the way they turned toward me, the way that attention landed on me, I cannot communicate to you what that felt like. Imagine being looked at by something that has hated you your entire life, longer than your entire life. Something that hated you before you were born, something that hates everything you are and everything you were made to be and hates you with a purity of focus that no human emotion can match. That is what it felt like to have those eyes on me. And I knew then that I was not supposed to be there. Not in the sense that someone had made a mistake. In the sense that I was not welcome. in the sense that my presence was a violation of something they considered their territory. And the danger of that moment was unlike anything I can describe, because what threatened me was not something I could fight with anything I had. There was nothing in me, nothing human, that was any kind of match for what was in that room. I opened my mouth, or whatever the equivalent of my mouth was in that place, and I called on the name of Jesus. I'm telling you this exactly the way it happened. I am not trying to preach at you. I'm just telling you what I did and what happened when I did it. The effect was immediate. Not gradual, not subtle. Immediate. It was like a sound that wasn't a sound, like a frequency that those beings could not tolerate, and the ones that had turned toward me recoiled, and there was, underneath the recoiling, something that I recognized even in that state, even in all my terror and grief and confusion. What I recognized was that they were afraid, not of me, of the name, and that understanding settled into me like an anchor, because all my life I had heard people talk about the power in that name. I had heard it in church, I had read it in the Bible, I had even believed it in a kind of abstract Sunday morning way. But to witness it, to be in the most hostile territory imaginable, and watch darkness itself flinch at a name, that is a different category of knowing. That is something that once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to believing it just a little bit, or believing it only when things are going fine. You believe it the way you believe the ground under your feet. I don't know how long I was in that place. Time doesn't work there the way it works here. What felt like hours might have been seconds. What felt like a moment stretched into something that had more information in it than years of living. But at some point, I began to move again, not toward the room. Away from it, back through whatever passage I had come through, back through the texture of the dark, back through the falling. And then I was back. I came back with a gasp like someone had pulled me out of water. I came back into a body that felt foreign for a few seconds, like climbing back into something you took off and forgot how it fit. I came back into a room with a ceiling and walls and light coming through a window, and all the ordinary realness of a physical world that suddenly seemed both fragile and precious in a way it never had before. I lay there for a long time before I could move. I lay there thinking about everything I had seen, running it through my mind over and over, checking it against itself the way you do when you're trying to figure out if something was a dream. But I knew it wasn't a dream. I have had dreams my whole life, and I know what they feel like. They blur at the edges when you try to hold them. They rearrange themselves when you try to tell them to someone. What I saw did not blur. What I saw did not rearrange. Every time I go back to it, every time I close my eyes and return to that place in my memory, it is exactly the same. Exact same images. Exact same feelings. Exact same knowing. That is not how dreams work. In the weeks and months after, I went back to Ephesians 6. I had read it before, probably dozens of times, but reading it after what I saw was a completely different experience. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Every single word of that landed differently. Because I had seen the principalities. I had seen the powers. I had seen the rulers of the darkness of this age gathered in council, doing exactly what that scripture says they do. Paul wasn't speaking poetically. Paul was reporting, and if Paul was reporting, then the rest of what he wrote in that chapter is reporting too. The armor is real. The belt of truth is a real protection. The breastplate of righteousness is real coverage. The shield of faith is a real defense against real arrows. Arrows, I now know, are fired from somewhere, from a place of planning and intention, aimed at specific people for specific reasons. We are not paranoid for believing in spiritual warfare. We are just awake. What changed in me after coming back? Everything changed, but I want to say this specifically. I stopped being passive, not just about my faith, about my life. Because one of the things I took from that room was the understanding that passivity is one of the greatest gifts you can give the enemy. Because they are not passive. They are the furthest thing from passive. They study and they plan and they assign and they execute and they watch the results and they adjust. And meanwhile, so many of us who are supposed to be in the fight are living like there is no fight. Going through the motions of church. Going through the motions of prayer. Going through the motions of reading the word without letting the word actually read us back. without letting it tell us where we are exposed, without using it as the living weapon it actually is. I went home, metaphorically speaking, a different man, whoever I was before that night. That version of Mark made a lot of assumptions about how much danger he was in and how much protection he actually had. The Mark who came back doesn't make those assumptions anymore. The Mark who came back prays differently. Prays with the knowledge that it matters, that it does something, that it reaches somewhere and moves something and holds something back that would otherwise come through. The Mark who came back looks at suffering differently too. When I see a person who cannot break free from something, when I see a family that is just being destroyed generation after generation, when I see a community that keeps getting hit, keeps losing, keeps falling apart no matter how hard the people in it try, I don't just see bad luck anymore. I don't just see bad decisions. I see a campaign. I see evidence of planning. I see assignments being carried out, and I also see the potential for those assignments to be disrupted, to be canceled, to be broken by the authority that made those beings flinch. That authority is available. That's the thing. It's available to every person who calls on that name with actual faith, not Sunday morning faith, not convenience faith, the kind of faith that has weight to it because it's been through something and it survived. I survived. I came back. And I don't fully understand why. I'm not going to pretend I have some complete theological explanation for why I went where I went or why I was allowed to return. I don't know all of that. I'm just a man who died and saw something and came back to tell it. Whatever purpose that serves, I trust it serves a real one. Because what I saw is too important for me to sit on. The war is real. The room is real. The planning is real. The attack on your life, on your family, on your mind, on your faith, on your relationships, on your calling. It is not random. It is not just life being hard. There is an intelligence behind it, and that intelligence has been working for a very long time. But there is a name that stops it cold, and you have access to that name. That's why I'm still here. That's why I wrote this down. That's why I am giving you every imperfect, shaking, honest word of it. So if you are listening to me today, please go closer to that one name that is bigger than every other. You need him because when plan of the enemy will unfold, you will need that one name, which is Jesus. My final encouragement to everyone listening to me is that your life is a blessing to this world. Take it serious and don't allow the things of this world make you lose it. Stay blessed and may God keep you. Thank you for listening. If you have been blessed by this testimony, please kindly give this video a like. And please don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more of this testimonies coming your way. Remain blessed.